look at algebraic expression.
And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at algebraic expression.
Okay, so today we'll look at composition, and under composition, writing a composition, you'll be expected to join sentences, and when joining these sentences, you need to connect them using connectors. And what does the word composition mean? What is to compose? Each something is put together or arranged. So when you have a paragraph, always consists of sentences or 3 paragraphs. Okay, so why do we use connecting words? Why are these connecting words important in writing? Why do we use connecting words when we are writing? Okay, so the first use flow. The second reason we use connecting words to make the information logical and easy to understand. So what does logical mean? Logical means something that comes from a clear reason to understand. Then another reason why we use connecting words or sequence indicators is to make good paragraphs by joining sentences. Maybe you'll be told to say, can you write a process? Can you write a process? For example, maybe they'll tell you to say, how can you prepare? Connect sentences with words that help the reader to understand the order of events. So when you are writing, so let's look at example. What do I mean? Why we need to use sentence? The tree smaller pieces allowed to dry gradually. Okay, the last being the wood. Okay, remember we have 3 sentences on the board. The first one, allowed to dry out gradually. 3. So which sequence indicator? Okay, so we'll get a sequencing. So the first into logs. Okay, then are allowed gradually. Example is using I've joined these 3 sentences. These logs are allowed to dry out using our sequence indicators after and then. We have got then and more examples of sequence indicators apart from then and after. So say, tell us in which indicators, apart from, we have afterwards, we have before, lastly, then after. Composition. Remember, words from the box of events clear. Fill in the blank spaces. Lastly, we have first, and the last one next. How to make frame. So our title, okay, so dash, measure 4p around half a piece, cut same size picture, then dash the wood, you put picture, nail the piece, string the picture, so use the connect 1, 2 in order to make the before into the frame, nail the piece of string to the back of the picture so that you can hang up the picture. So these are the sequence indicators that I've chosen for you. The box to make a composition to a composition is sequence indicators, and it makes the writing to flow. As the reader is reading, you'll be able to understand whatever the person is reading. So we've come to the end of our lesson. Remember to go through and read through so that next time, even if you find a composition for you, you'll be able to know to say, I need to join these sentences using the sequence. Joining those sentences, you need to use these sequence indicators.
Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geography.
Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock. Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.
Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.
Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.
afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
We'll look at algebraic expression.
Good afternoon, class. My name is Miss Goma, teaching you Integrated Science Grade 9. The circles in the biosphere. Are we together, class? So before we go any further, we need to define what a biosphere is. What is a biosphere? The biosphere, these are regions of the surface and atmosphere of the earth occupied by living things, okay? I'm defining a biosphere to be the regions of the surface and the atmosphere of the earth, of the surface and atmosphere of the earth occupied by living and atmosphere of the earth occupied by living things. So, a biosphere, organisms. Okay, supporting ecosystem where living organisms interact with each other. Okay, made up of the earth's life supporting where living organisms interact with each other. Okay, sphere is made up of what? Living organisms. A part of it being made up of living organisms, it is also made up of the Earth's life supporting ecosystem. Okay, so this is where living organisms interact with each other. Okay, so what are these living organisms that makes up a biosphere? Okay, examples of living organisms. Okay, class, do you know any examples of these human beings, which is us human beings? So we have animals. Animals are also examples of living things. Apart from animals, we also have plants. Okay, so the first one we have got human beings. The second one we have animals. The third one we have plants. Okay, so the sphere is made up of these three. Biosphere, it depends on something. Okay, so these three living things cannot live without abiotic things. Okay, so we're saying living organisms depend. So these living organisms that we've mentioned, human beings, animals and plants, non-living things. Okay, so abiotic things, also known as non-living things or organisms okay, so if we're saying about non-living things, okay, so examples of abiotic things are: 1, minerals. We have minerals. 2, we have chemical substances. And examples of abiotic things we're saying are oxygen, nitrogen gas. Living organisms depend on abiotic things, and we've said the other name for abiotic things are non-living things, and I've given you examples of non-living things, which are minerals, chemical. Okay, I'll give you an example and I'll tell you the reason why we're saying. I gave you examples of living things that make up a biosphere. And these living things that I gave you are human beings, animals, and plants, okay? So when you look at this, self, a human being. When you look at me, for me to live, I depend on abiotic or non-living things. I depend on what? Okay? The reason why I'm saying what? Oxygen, okay? And oxygen is an example of a chemical substance which falls under non-living or non-living things, okay? They cannot stand without abiotic things or without non-living things. I'm defining a biosphere and what a biosphere is made up of, and examples of living things and examples of abiotic things or nitrogen. Sound the points that are on the board. DNA, RNA, and proteins, okay? So I'm saying nitrogen is an essential DNA, RNA, and proteins. Of the letters DNA stand for? What do the letters DNA stand for? Apart from that, we should also know the letters RNA, what they stand for, okay, and their functions, okay. So we'll start with the DNA. What do the letters DNA stand for, class? What do the letters DNA stand for, class? Can anyone try to give us what the letters DNA stand for? Okay, so DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, okay? Yeah, deoxyribonucleic acid. It stands for nucleic acid. Are we together, class? I'm just from ribonucleic acid, okay? So if DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, what do you think it does? What do you think it does? What's the function of the DNA? Okay, so the thing, if the letters DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, its function, it is to carry the genetic information in all living things, okay? So the function, its function, it does what? It carries the genetic in living things, in living nucleic acid. And its function, it is to carry the genetic information in all. So on the second one, which is the RNA. What do the letters RNA stand for? Class, RNA, okay? Acid. So the letters of RNA, ribo, that's between the DNA and the RNA, okay? The RNA stands for ribonucleic acid. So what they have done, they've just removed the deox, okay? What they have done, they've just removed the deox and they've remained with the ribonucleic acid. That's a secret. So if you know what the letters DNA stands for, you will not have the problems with what RNA stands for, nucleic acid. But with the RNA, they've only removed the deox and they've remained with the ribonucleic acid. Are we together, class? So let us go to A in all living things. What about the ribonucleic acid or RNA? What's the function for RNA? Can anyone try the RNA? Okay, so the RNA acts as a messenger. It acts like a messenger, okay, on how proteins are made. It gets the information from the DNA as a messenger. It acts as a messenger on. Are we together, class? Are there any questions? Are we together? So we all know that the DNA, the RNA, and proteins, these are essential compounds of nitrogen. At least now we know what the letters DNA stands for. We've said DNA stands for ribonucleic in living things, okay? Then we've said that the RNA stands for ribonucleic acid, and it's fast. Are we together, class? Then we all know that ingredient blocks of life, okay? So in grade 8, we learn any questions. At least you can define what a biosphere is, what a biosphere it's made up of. We've also learned examples of living things and why living things depend on a biotic or. Okay, so we're saying proteins are building blocks of life, okay? So we have 78% of nitrogen in the atmosphere. So we have 78% of nitrogen in the atmosphere or in the air, okay? So we have 78% of nitrogen in the atmosphere or in the air. So the question comes in to you, my pupils. Question comes in to say, how do plants and human beings obtain this nitrogen, okay? So my question on the board is, how do human beings and plant nitrogen from the air? Anyone with an answer? Anyone with an answer on how do human beings, animals, and plants obtain nitrogen from the air, okay? So one thing we should know that human beings, plants, animals do not obtain nitrogen directly from the air, not until it is converted into nitrates. Are we together, class? I'm saying living things do not obtain nitrogen directly from the air, not until it is what? Converted into nitrates, okay? So, into nitrates to be used. Apart from it being converted from nitrogen to nitrates, they can also convert nitrogen into ammonia. Are we together, class? Okay, so can someone give us an answer on how do human beings and plants obtain nitrogen from the air? Okay, so I'll start with plants. Plants nitrogen in the soil where it is grown in. That's how plants obtain nitrogen. So plants obtain where it is grown in. What about animals? How do animals obtain nitrogen? Okay? So animals obtain nitrogen from the food they eat. Animals and human beings obtain nitrogen from the food they eat. Are we together, class? Obtain nitrogen. I'm just from saying that plants obtain nitrogen from the soil they are grown in the ground. Then as human beings and animals, we put nitrates there in the vegetables, they grow. As a human being, you go and pluck out those vegetables and you eat. The moment you eat, what are you obtaining? Nitrogen needs to be converted into nitrates to be used. Living things do not use nitrogen directly, but it needs to be what? Converted into nitrates or ammonium to be used, okay? So there are 3 ways that are involved for nitrogen to be converted into nitrate, in which nitrogen is converted into nitrates or ammonia. Okay? In which nitrogen converted into nitrates. Okay? So in which nitrogen is converted into nitrates so that the plants can use the nitrates. Okay, so the first one is industrial processes. Okay? So the first one we have industrial processes. Okay, so the first one is industrial processes where nitrogen is gotten and heated at a high temperature to form nitrates. Lightning strikes. Then the last one, okay? Can anyone try, apart from the two ways I've given you on the board, which is involved in converting nitrogen into nitrates? The first one I've given you is industrial processes, okay? Okay. Then the second one, lightning strikes the atmosphere, okay? So in our local language, we say kaleza, which is one. Okay, so the last one is through legume plants. The last one is plants. Okay. To those who take agriculture science, to those vegetables, and an example of these legume plants are, okay? So examples of legume plants, these are vegetables. Groundnuts and peas. Okay? So legume vegetables, these are vegetables like beans, groundnut, peas. Any vegetables that are found in pods, okay? Any vegetables that are found in pods, okay? So we have plants, okay? So any other way, nitrogen that can be put back in the soil is through legume plants. And these are beans, groundnuts, and peas, okay? So these type of vegetables or plants, they fix back nitrogen in the soil, okay? They fix back nitrogen, the rhizobium back roots of the plants. Okay, so these are the three ways nitrogen can be converted into nitrates. One, through industry, which fix back nitrogen in the soil with the help of the rhizobium bacteria, which is found in the root nodules. Are we together, class? Okay, I think for today we'll end here. The next time we're here, we'll look on nitrogen cycle. What happens in the nitrogen cycle? Okay, are there any questions in today's lesson? Are there any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I've got a homework for you. When we're back after next week, we'll look at this homework together, okay? So at least you're able to define what a biosphere is. You're able to tell me what a biosphere is made up of, okay? And you now know things or non-living things. And now we know that in the air or the environment that we're in, we have 78% of nitrogen. Are we together, class? And we now know things we do not obtain nitrogen directly, but it needs to be converted into nitrates. And these are the three ways that are involved for nitrogen to be converted into nitrates. Okay, so our lesson ends here. So you can get your books, write down the homework that I have for you. The homework that I have for you. Okay. Question 1. Question 1. It says study and answer the questions that follow. Okay. So the chart is as follows. You can draw it down as we write the questions. Like that. In the first box, we have nitrogen gas A here. In the second box, we have plants. Okay, we have plants. Then in the brackets, we have proteins. Okay, then the arrow goes down there, which is C. Then down here, we have animals. In the brackets, we have proteins as well. Then we have a box here. In this box, we have ammonium. Okay, then we have an arrow here, the last box down here, where we have nitrates. Nitrates. Okay, this is the last box here. So there's an arrow here, like that. Then we have the last box here, where we have nitrates. Then we have the arrow that goes back, nitrogen. Yeah. Okay. So the first question, A. Okay, so we have A. Name the circle that, name the circle that this flow chart represents. Okay, that's the first one. B says, name the chemical changes marked. Name the chemical changes marked. I, we have A. 2, we have B. 3, we have C. And 4, we have D. Okay? Then C says, state the percentage. State the percentage of nitrogen in the atmosphere. Okay? Then the last one, D, says, explain why nitrogen is essential for life on Earth. Okay, so this is the last question. So this is the homework that I have for you on the board. Go and work on it. The next time we're here, we'll discuss the answers together. Okay, so it was nice having this lesson with you. Enjoy the next lesson. Thank you.
Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.
Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.